All praises be to the Most High God, the God of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and peace to each and every one of you in the mighty name of Jesus. Always kind of a blessing, truly a blessing at the time that I can stand before you and preach the Lord's word, and never do I count it a light day to do so. The title of today's lesson is Reclaiming Our History, Not His Story. Now let me make it clear, we are a universal people. We are indeed a people who are accepting of others, in the sense that there exists within the nation of Israel a commonwealth. All those who desire to worship the God of Israel are indeed spiritual Israel, which is more important than lineage. However, we can no longer deny the fact that the nation of Israel is a nation of color. Please note that not all black people are the same. We are not African, although we are here as a result of the transatlantic slave trade by way of Africa. We are not permitted. As a matter of fact, we dwelt in Africa as strangers, just as we dwell in these Americas as strangers. We are not the ones that made color a factor. Rather, it was made a factor once white supremacy became the ruling force upon this earth. Some profess adamantly that color does not matter. But if color was of no consequence, why has there been such a concerted effort to promote inaccurate images and lies in the face of what is obvious? Thus it becomes necessary to reclaim our history, not his story, but our story. The first step in such a process is stating an obvious truth. Our history, biblical history in general, has been whitewashed. Understand, as long as you allow others to tell your story, it will be to your detriment. We have been told that we are something that we are not. The psychological damaging impact of a white Jesus alone has done much to enslave us as a people. If you think I am exaggerating, be truthful when you think of Jesus. Right now, think of him. And does not a blonde-haired, blue-eyed man come to mind, even with all of the knowledge and understanding that you have? See, for generations in captivity, we have worshipped this image, and furthermore transferred our benevolence to all those who look like him, and have despised ourselves because we can never look like him. We have been told that we are less than, and we have internalized the message of our captors, and we remain psychologically enslaved. But we are, regardless of what anybody has to say, the chosen people of God. We are people who have laws, statutes, and commandments from the Creator of heaven and earth, and from this we derive a culture. You are not the decadent group that you have become. I have been in a classroom and told a child that Jesus was black, and he couldn't understand. Because sometimes in the system of education, you just have to basically go outside of the curriculum if you really want somebody to learn something. And the reason I take time to teach children about these things is because they have so much self-hatred. Because they see that even as little children, they see the condition that our people are in, and they hate it. And so they hate themselves. They hate that color. But we are a beautiful people. And we are God's chosen people. We have to use this book, the Holy Bible, as a means of liberation for our people in the context in which we exist. Because it can be used for two purposes: to enslave or to liberate. Jesus even came to liberate us spiritually. But we need to be liberated as a people, and we start out by understanding who we are and actually applying this as a nation of people, and start thinking like a nation. Not as scattered individuals, which this is the way in which we think today. During the course of this lesson, we will identify Israel through color and curses. We will see also what is in store for a downtrodden people. Again, the title of this lesson is Reclaiming Our History, Not His Story. Don't let anybody else, especially the children in here, don't let anybody else tell you who you are. Don't let anybody else teach you who you are. That's actually the parents' job, to teach their children who they are, not the school. Because the school is based on something else. The school is based on keeping the status quo going. That's the whole point of it. You have to teach your own children who they are. We're going to start off in Genesis 10 and verse 1. Again, reclaiming our history, not his story. Genesis 10. Because here we want to see where everybody belongs. We want to see where all the nations derived. This is Genesis 10 and verse 1. And when you're there, you can go ahead.
Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were sons born after the flood. Okay, so now we had the 3 sons of Noah. Out of these sons, all men and women have come forth from. You have Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now we're going to find out who we are from. Okay, we are from Shem. We're going to find that out. But keep reading, please. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Maiah, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshach, and Tireth. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, and Rephah, and Togarmah. And the sons of Javan, Elishah, and Tarkish, Kittim, and Doadim. By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families, in their nation. Okay, so out of Japheth, or Japheth, came Gentiles. Gentiles are simply European or commonly known as white folks. Okay? Now let's keep reading verse 6, because another group came forth. Go ahead. And the sons of Ham. The sons of Ham. Let's find out who they are. Cush and Mizraim. And Put and Canaan. Okay, so we have the sons of Ham. Cush, which is Ethiopia. Mizraim, Egypt. Put, Libya. And Canaan, which is the land that we went into. So let's go to the first reference. Oh, actually, did you read? Verse 7. Verse 7, thank you. And the sons of Cush, Seba, and Havilah, and Sapta, and Raamah, and Saptica, and the sons of Raamah, Sheba, and Dedan. Okay, so now these are where Japheth's sons came from, and Ham. So let's find out something about that, because it's only 3. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Okay? So let's find out, let's go to the reference 1, sons of Noah, Ham, and Japheth. And we're going to find out that by process of elimination, we can only come from Shem. Let's read where it says Ham. It says Ham, the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of the 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor or father of the dark races. Okay, so when you think of Africa, they came from him, Ham. But who didn't come from him? It says not the Negroes. We are who they call Negroes. See, this is not just in here because they decided to put it in here. They actually scientifically proved that we are not the same as Africans. Okay? And you have to be real careful when you even say African. Because people talk about they are African American. Where does the word Africa come from? Africa, the word comes from a man who defeated Hannibal, who was a great general out of northern Africa, out of Carthage. His name was Scipio Africanus. And they named that area after him. Prior to him, it was not called Africa. Where does the word America come from? It comes from, he was an Italian. America comes from the name of another Italian, Amerigo Vespucci, who came to the Americas. Okay, so we have to be careful about what things are named and who gave us names. See, we've been constantly given names. All right, we've been called Negro, colored, Afro-American, black, African-American, but none of those have to do with nationality. None of those have to really do with land. Those are colors. Okay, and just inaccurate names. So Ham is the father of the dark races, or who we call Africans today, but it said not the Negroes. Well, let's see if we came from Japheth. Japheth, this is on page 402 of the Zondervan Pictorial Dictionary, reads, Japheth, he is the progenitor or father of the more northern peoples of southeastern Europe. Again, like I said, he's the father of the Europeans. That he was to occupy the tents of Shem and start to refer to conquest of the Greeks who were descendants of Japheth. So Alexander the Great and all those people that you read about in history when you go to school,
They came from Japheth. Because history is largely based on Western civilization when you're in these schools. This he did during the days of Assyrian power. He had 7 sons whose descendants occupied the Isles of the Gentiles. Okay? So we, by default, or process of elimination, excuse me, come from Shem. We are Semitic. We are not Hamitic. And we're not Gentiles either. We are Semitic. Let's go back to the scriptures. Genesis 42. Genesis 42. Because as I stated earlier, we want to look at this because as I stated, our history, the Bible in general has been whitewashed. Okay? So some very obvious things have been ignored. We want to look at the color of Israel. Okay? We want to look at the color of Israel. Let's go to Genesis, the 42nd chapter and verse 1. Genesis 42 and verse 1. We're going to look at the color of Israel. And when you're there, you can go ahead.
Now when Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt, Jacob said unto his sons, why do ye look one upon another? And he said, behold, I have heard that there is corn in Egypt. Get ye down thither, and buy for us from thence, that we may live and not die.
Okay, so Jacob, the patriarch of us, he sent his sons down into Egypt because there was famine. Okay, now skip down to verse 3. Thank you.
And Joseph's 10 brothers went down to buy corn in Egypt.
So they went down to buy corn in Egypt. Now this is after they had sold their brother Joseph. This is many years later. Now let's find out what happens. This is verse 6. When you're there, go ahead.
And Joseph was the governor of the land.
Now Joseph had ascended into governorship. Okay? He went in a slave and became a ruler in the land of Egypt. And Joseph was the governor over that land. And it was he that sold to all the people of the land. Because everybody was coming because there was famine and they needed to buy food. And he had devised a plan so that Egypt would survive. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth. Now we read some chapters before this that they sold their brother into slavery to some Ishmaelites who are Arabs. Okay? And then he got sold into Egypt. Now they're bowing down to him like he had dreamed about. And let's read verse 7. What does it say?
And Joseph saw his brother.
And Joseph saw his brother. He recognized his brother. But what about them?
And he knew them, but made himself strange unto them, and spake roughly unto them. And he said unto them, whence come ye? And they said, from the land of Canaan, to buy food.
Go ahead.
And Joseph knew his brother, but they knew not him.
Oh, now wait a minute. Now Joseph saw his brother and he recognized him after many years. But why did they not recognize him? They didn't recognize him because he didn't look any different from the people who were in Egypt. And we're going to find out the Egyptians are black or shades of brown. The ancient original Egyptians. So it says, and Joseph saw his brother and he knew them, but made himself strange unto them. How did he make himself strange? He spoke to them in the Egyptian tongue. He already had what are likely Egyptian garments on. So they just took him to be another Egyptian. Now if he looked like the man we see on Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat play, then he would stick out like a sore thumb. He would stick out. Like, man, that's our brother. Because he would be European looking amidst a bunch of dark people. Okay? Because we saw that Egypt is a son, or Mizraim, which is another word for Egypt, is a son of Ham, the progenitor of the dark races. So it says, and Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew not him. That's the only way you could not recognize your own brother. Because he is not sticking out. After many years, first of all, they weren't expecting him there to be in that position anyway. But let's go to Exodus. Because you constantly see Israelites mistaken for Egyptians. And the only reason you are mistaken for an individual or one to belong to one group, you have to look like them. You see, I can go to Nigeria right now, and I can fit in. Many of us can go to Angola right now and fit in, all right? And we can blend in. especially if we knew the language. But let's say I go to the Netherlands. Let's say I go to France. They're going to mistake me for an immigrant. They say he's not from here. Why? Because I don't look like the people of that land. It's real simple. See, so you know, just based on some basic things, there has been this concerted effort to hide the truth. There's been this concerted effort to hide the truth. Let's look at the example of Moses. This is Exodus, the 2nd chapter, and verse 16. Because this is after Moses, who was raised up in the house of Pharaoh, left after he killed a man for abusing one of his Israelite brothers. All right, so this is Exodus 2 and verse 16. And when you're there, you can go ahead.
Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock.
Okay, so now this is talking about Jethro, who eventually became the father-in-law of Moses. Verse 17.
And the shepherds came and drove them away.
So he sent his daughters to the well to get water, and the shepherds would drive them away. Go ahead.
But Moses stood up and helped them.
So he stood up and helped the sisters. Go ahead.
And watered their flock.
Okay.
And when they came to Reuel, their father, he said, how is it that ye have come so soon today?
All right, so when they came to Reuel or Jethro, it's the same person. He said, how is it that ye are come so soon today? So how is it that you are finished with the work that I gave you to do? What did they tell you?
And they said, an Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds.
They said, an Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds. But the one that delivered them was Moses. He was mistaken for an Egyptian. Why? Because more than likely, he grew up in the Egyptian household. He probably had Egyptian garb on, and he looked like an Egyptian. He looked like an Egyptian. Let's go all the way to the New Testament. Let's go to Acts, the 21st chapter. Because as I stated, we constantly see Israelites being mistaken for Egyptians. Now here's an example of Paul. Now when they show those pictures of Paul, usually Paul, because of the philosophical nature of his writings, you know, all these pictures come from the vain imagination of some man's mind. Okay? But we take them as truth. And the image is oftentimes more powerful than the actual word that you read. Even when you read something, you have to make it into an image to process it. So that's why they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. It truly is. But oftentimes you see Paul and he's looking intellectual. He's often got the, you know, the cul-de-sac going on. Look like he doesn't have any hair. He's European. Paul was not a European. He was a Roman citizen. But he was an Israelite. And the Israelites are people of color. And that's why he was mistaken for an Egyptian. Let's read that. Acts 21 and verse 37. And when you're there, you can go ahead.
And as Paul was led into the castle, he said unto the chief captain, now speak unto thee, who said, canst thou speak Greek?
He asked him, canst thou speak Greek? Go ahead.
Art not thou that Egyptian which before these days made us an uproar, and led us out into the wilderness 4,000 men that were murderers?
So he was mistaken. He said unto the chief captain, probably in the Greek tongue, because he knew many languages. He said, now I speak unto thee. And he said, canst thou speak Greek? Art not thou that Egyptian? So he thought he was an Egyptian. You see, he's mistaken for an Egyptian. So let's find out how the Egyptians looked. Now we must also note that when you look at the nation of Egypt today, it does not look like the nation of Egypt looked like yesterday. Why? Because it has been conquered, like most of North Africa, by Arabs. By Arabs. When you saw the rise of Islam around the 600s, you see Arabs went through North Africa and conquered it. Okay, and Egypt was one of those places that they conquered. So Egypt is considered to be an Arab country, but if you go deep into Egypt, and if you look in the ghettos of Egypt, you'll see the same black people that were always there. And you know what else you can do that too? You can go to Palestine and see black people that were always there. So let's go to the second reference. It says depictions of ancient Egyptians and Israelites. And through their own art, you see what the people look like. You see what the people look like. Okay, so here we have ancient Egyptians. This was a picture of a light infantry, people in the Egyptian army. Okay, this was 1480 BC. Okay, obviously these are people of color. These are people of color. Here we have Ramesses II. Ramesses II, between 1279 BC and 1213 BC. Okay? So some people think he could have been one of the pharaohs during the days of Moses. We're not debating that. What I'm saying is simply look what he looked like. Okay? So if you dressed us up in that same garb, we'll look just like he looked. Not the people today, though. The people today that claim to be Israel or Israelis can never be mistaken for Egyptians because they look European. Here we have Queen Tiye. You see, this is a sister. There's no mistaking that. Okay, the great royal wife of the Egyptian pharaoh Amenhotep III. Okay, her mummy was identified as the elder lady found in the tomb of Amenhotep II in 2010. There's no getting around, that's a person of color. But they will tell you that the Egyptians, they will come out and say the Egyptians were white or they light olive because they cannot make the Egyptians black people or shades of brown, as you say, which is more accurate. Why can't they do that? Because everything that Western civilization has, much of it, when you talk about philosophy, when you talk about science, when you talk about mathematics, that all came from Egypt. When you think about these Greek philosophers, the greatest of them, you know what they studied? They studied in Egypt. They studied in Egypt in their mystery schools and were educated there. When you look at science, and they have some of the greatest scientists. Even when you look at how they built the pyramids, they still to this day cannot figure it out. And many scientists are coming to the conclusion that those pyramids were not just simply tombs, but rather created energy. And actually they had electricity within those pyramids. They cannot attribute that to a people of color and then at the same time say you're less than. So it's not just us as a people, anybody of color. Because Japheth's time to rule is now. Here we have Thutmose III, another one who they say may have been a pharaoh during the time of Moses. He was the 6th pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. Again, that's clear. That is clear. That's clear. Now you see some of us on the Egyptian walls. You get this brother at the top and you add one more, you got the Jackson 5. They got a bunch of pros. Here we see a sculpted wall excavated at ancient Nineveh or Babylon. This is said before Sennacherib was routed at Jerusalem by the angel of the Lord, he had captured 36 cities. And you see the captive, these are Israelites. They got cornrows in their head. They look like us. They do not look like the people who saying they Israel today. We'll get to that. Again, Israelites in ancient Babylon from a sculpted wall. If you can see it, I don't know, maybe it's clear on your handout, but they have locks. And it's some nappy locks like I got. You see, these are how ancient Israelites look. They look the same way they do today. People of color. So let's get back. Actually, if you turn to the third reference, because I mentioned Greeks, right? This person right here, Herodotus, wrote a famous work, The Histories. He traveled through Babylon and Egypt and other places. He is called the father of history. I don't refer to him as the father of history. He's not the father of history. But he did make some observations. It's always when, unfortunately, I'm just saying, just keep it real obvious, it's when Europeans come, it's a discovery. It's like, man, we discover, it could be millions of people living there, have culture, have their own history, and then you come and all of a sudden it's a discovery. Like Columbus discovered America. No, Columbus came, he raped and he pillaged and he wiped out multitudes of people. That's what he did. And he opened the way for the transatlantic slave trade to come to the Americas. You wouldn't have it had you not had Columbus. And prior to him coming here, he was a slave trader. But you teach you in school that he is the one you should uphold. See, even their murderers you will uphold. Even their rapists and their colonizers you will uphold. But somebody who actually may have stood up for your own people, you don't know anything about him. So this is Herodotus. Let's read what he found in his travels to Egypt. This is reference 3. It says, and understand, he's not trying to prove that the Egyptians are black people. But let's see what he said. Indeed, this way has no more truth than the rest, alleging as it does that the Nile flows from melting snow, whereas it flows out of Libya through the midst of the Ethiopians, and so comes out into Egypt. Oftentimes they couldn't figure out who came first, Ethiopia or the Egyptians, who was more prominent initially. We know, because Ethiopia had it was a great kingdom as well. How then should it flow from the snow? See, again, his subject is not even about color. He does it in a different way. It says, when it flows from the hottest parts to those which are cooler, and indeed most of the facts are such as to convince a man, one at least capable of reasoning about such matters. So he's worried about the flow of the Nile River. That it is not at all likely that it flows from snow. The first and greatest evidence is afforded by the winds, which blow from these regions, Egypt, Ethiopia, and Libya. We read about these places. These are the places of Mizraim, Put, Cush. The second is that the land is rainless, always without frost, whereas after snow had fallen, rain must necessarily come within 5 days. So that's his subject matter. So that if it snowed in those parts, rain would fall there. The third evidence is afforded by the people dwelling there. So he indirectly tells you what color the Egyptians are. He says, when he starts talking about the people there, he said about these Egyptians, Ethiopians, and Libyans, who are black color. That's how it's spelled, by reason of the burning heat. See, so he is saying that the Egyptians are a black people. Indirectly, talking about something else, and he says it. Now, this is their father in history. But stuff like this, they will discount this. Even this is as clear as day. They will still, even, we looked at the images, clear as day, they will discount it and say those people are not a people of color. Because again, you can't enslave, colonize, and oppress and take advantage of people who are not less than. But it says Egyptians, Ethiopians, and Libyans who are black color by reason of the burning heat. Now, this next person, this is Sheikh Anta Diop, who was, he died, but he was a prominent scholar, and he's from Senegal. Okay? They have a university named after him there. Right? He earned 5 PhDs. He earned one in physics, African history, Egyptology, linguistics, anthropology. And this is what he said in his book, The African Origin of Civilization, Myth or Reality. Talking about Herodotus. He said Herodotus may be mistaken when he reports the customs of a people, because he went to these places and he was writing down all that he saw. Well, you can misunderstand what some people are doing that you don't know. But one thing he says, when he reasons more or less cleverly to explain a phenomenon incomprehensible in his day. But one must grant that he was at least capable of recognizing the skin color of the inhabitants of the countries he had visited. Because back in his day, when he brought this forth and was saying that Egyptians are black people, and he was trying to do that for his dissertation, he caught all kind of flack for that. But he said, how could you not take Herodotus saying that? And it's clear. You don't need a PhD. You don't need a GED to say somebody is black. You don't need any education for that. A child can tell what color he's brown. They know their colors. You know your colors, then you can say what color they are. Let's go to the next one. This is Maspero, who was an Egyptologist. Okay? And this is his book. It's in French on there, but it says this ancient history of the people of the Orient. And he says, by the almost unanimous testimony of ancient historians, they, talking about the Egyptians, belong to an African race which first settled in Ethiopia. On the Middle Nile, following the course of the river, they gradually reached the sea. So he says it. And one thing about it, there are countless accounts of Greek historians and scholars and Romans saying that the Egyptians are a black people. Now, again, the Egyptians are black, or people of color. And we were mistaken for Egyptians. How could they be Caucasian looking? Even the Bible itself tells you how they look. Let's go to Lamentations, the 4th chapter. Lamentations, the 4th chapter. This is Lamentations 4 and verse 6. 4 and verse 6 is here. This is the Lamentations of who they call the weeping prophet Jeremiah. He talked about the horrors of the siege of Jerusalem. And what did he say? Whenever you're ready, you can go ahead.
For the punishment of the iniquity of the daughter of my people is greater than the punishment of the sin of Sodom, that was overthrown as in a moment, and no hand stayed on her.
See, that's what happens. See, you open yourself up to affliction. You open yourself up to being oppressed by other people when you turn from your God, especially us, because he came down and manifested himself unto us, so we had no excuse. So the punishment of the iniquity of the daughter of my people is greater than the punishment of the sin of Sodom. And Sodom was destroyed and consumed in a moment. Fire and brimstone rained from heaven. But verse 7.
Her Nazarites were purer than snow.
Her Nazarites at one time were pure than snow, meaning they were righteous. These were people, men and women that were dedicated to God. Didn't drink of the vine and let their locks grow long. Wouldn't come near any dead thing. Her Nazarites were pure or more righteous. They were whiter than milk. Not talking about their color, rather talking about their righteousness. They were what? Now when he gets to their body, what does he say?
They were more ruddy in body than ruby. Their polishing was of sapphire.
So they were more ruddy in body, meaning their skin had blood flowing to it. They were healthy looking, like Daniel looked after he ate the vegetables and drank the water, right? So they looked healthy. But what about now?
Their visage is blacker than a coal.
Their visage, or how they look, their appearance is blacker than a coal. Why? Because you get ill, you don't eat, you get dark. You get darker than you are. But see, the people who say they are the chosen people today could never be blacker than a coal. Their visage is blacker than a coal. Go ahead.
They are not known in the streets.
They are not known in the streets as they once were. Go ahead.
Their skin cleaveth to their bone. It is withered. It has become like a stick. Lamentations 5 and verse 1.
Because he prays to the Lord about what is happening to his people. And again, you open yourself up to it, you sin against God. That's our problem. Lamentations 5 and 1. When you're there, you can go ahead.
Remember, O Lord, what has come upon us. Consider and behold our reproach.
So he's asking the Lord to remember and have mercy. Go ahead. What's happening?
Our inheritance is turned to strangers, our houses to aliens.
So our inheritance, that promised land that you gave to us, And now, just like it is today, other people are in the land that he gave us. He gave us the promised land of Canaan, and other people are there, and they fighting over the land. And we sit here in captivity, don't even think we have a land. That's what I'm saying. One of our main problems, we don't understand what freedom is. You can never disassociate land from freedom. You need land and self-determination to be free. And until you have that, you're not free. I don't care if you could be over here in our house. That's $250,000. You can have a nice car. You can have a decent job. You're still not free. Because you don't have land and you don't have self-determination. He said, our inheritance is turned to strangers, our houses to aliens. Verse 7.
Our fathers have sinned.
Our fathers, our ancestors have sinned and transgressed God's law. Go ahead.
And are not. And we have borne their iniquity.
And because of their sin, we have suffered the consequences. Go ahead.
Servants have ruled over us. There is none that thou deliver us out of their hands.
So now we are under the rule of servants. Like I said, I'll make you jealous from a people who are no people. That's the situation we in now. Everybody is above us. And if they are low on the societal ladder, they will align with us for a moment and then step on us to get to where they want to be. Understand, you have no friends. Don't get it twisted. You have no friend. Your friend is in the Lord. And amongst your own people, you have no friends. Not the Chinese, not the Mexican, not other people of other nations. That's just the bottom line. Not the people who call themselves Israel today. You have no friends. Go ahead.
We got our bread with the pearl of our lives because of the sword of the wilderness.
So we're barely eating. Go ahead.
Our skin was black like an oven.
Our skin was black like an oven because of the terrible famine. That's what happens in famine. It affects your skin and everything. But see, these are all black. We are black people. Let's go to Exodus. See, it's some things that are just being ignored. There's some things that are just being ignored. That are obvious. And since we don't know how to critically analyze things, we become deceived. That's why they can show you something on a History Channel and show Israel and they all these different kind of colors. And we tripping because Samson is black. But hold on. All those people supposed to be black. Why you worried about Samson? Oh, he was black. Yeah, So, this is Exodus 4:1. Some basic, obvious things are being ignored. 4:1. You there? Go ahead.
And Moses answered and said, But behold, they will not believe me, nor hearken to my voice. But they will say, the Lord had not appeared unto thee.
Because the Lord had appeared unto Moses, and Moses was apprehensive about going to the people. Because you have to think about it. That'd be like until you going to Obama. Because he Pharaoh. Don't get that twisted either. And say, let my people go. You going to the most powerful nation on the planet with a staff. Alright? So skip down to verse 6. Because he said, well, I'm going to give you these powers. When you there, go ahead.
And the Lord said furthermore unto him, Put now thine hand into thy bosom.
Put your hand in your bosom. Go ahead.
And he put his hand into his bosom, and when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous as snow. So he put his hand in his bosom, and when he took it out, his hand was white. Now that would not be a miracle if he was already white. So you go from pink to white or something. That's not a miracle. But if you dark skinned and you put your hand in your bosom and your hand come out white, that's a miracle. Maybe people will take notice. Go ahead. And he said, Put thine hand into thy bosom again. And he put his hand into his bosom again, and plucked it out of his bosom. And behold, it was turned again as his other flesh.
And it was turned again as his other flesh. We don't need to read the rest of that. Let's go to Revelation. Because right here, this is one of the most obvious things. I mean, it's so obvious, and yet it is ignored so. The color of the Messiah. The color of Jesus. I know I grew up thinking he was white. I can remember going to my grandmother's house, Big Mama's what I call it, and she had her Bible right there on the living room table. That big white Bible with that circle, it got like a circle on the front, and Jesus, supposed to be Jesus, and there's a white man with like light brown hair with blue eyes, looks kind of feminine. That's what I remember growing up. Many of us had that picture in our homes. Many of us, when you went to church on the wrong day, took up a fan, and you saw that same Jesus knocking on the door. I said, he appeared in the midst of them. Why are you knocking on the door? But anyway, let's go Revelation 1 and verse 14. When you there, go ahead.
His head and his hairs were white like the wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire.
So here we're talking about Jesus. We're talking about the King of Kings. His head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire. Now what about his skin? Verse 15.
And his feet like unto fine brass.
His feet were like unto fine brass. The color of brass, go ahead.
As if they burned in the furnace.
As if they burned in a furnace. Something's burning in a furnace is not coming out white. He was a man of color. He had color. But see, when you say this to people, they will say, it don't, say this to a lot of people, not everybody, but some people, they say, it don't matter. It do matter. Because if it didn't matter, like I stated in the introduction, there would not be such an effort to change the color. But see, they have psychologically enslaved people of color. They didn't just give that picture to us. They gave that picture to other peoples of color. When they went to colonize them, then they gave them some false religion, and then they took their land and took their resources. And his feet like unto fine brass as if they burn in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters. Like I said, I've showed children this from a historical perspective, not even preaching to them, just showing them. I said, well, you know, that land is just an extension of what we call Africa. And it wasn't until the cutting of the Suez Canal that you see the separation. And that land was inhabited by peoples of color. And the Egyptians were black people. And you know what these beautiful black children tell me? That couldn't be. God could not look like me. That's some self-hatred. That's why I say it's up to parents to teach their children. It's up to fathers to instruct them in their customs and their faith. But let's look at some of the earliest depictions of biblical figures, most prominent. Jesus, let me say this right off the bat. Don't leave here saying, oh, okay, it's fine to have this hanging up in my house. Don't do it. I didn't tell you that. But what I am showing you is that there has been a change from what people, how they depicted Jesus. Let's look at some of the first depictions. Okay, so now this is, if you can see, these are all brothers. Alright, so now this is Moses. This is from 303 BC. Now this is, if you can see over here, this is water. Now you see people, they black too. These are the Egyptians in the water drowning. And these are the Israelites. And that's Moses. I never saw pictures like this growing up. I can remember every Easter or the night before watching Charles and Heston talk about letting my people go. But you notice he could split the sea and do some other things, throw the staff down, but he couldn't put his hand in his bosom because he was white. Nothing against white folks, but this is just the reality. Moses and the Hebrews crossing the Red Sea. Now these are some of the first images. Alright, now if you can tell, I don't know if you can see it from there. This is a wall painting depicting the healing of a man that was paralyzed. And that's supposed to be Jesus. And if you can see it, if you see it, he's a person of color. Where is this from? 235 AD. This is only 200 years after, 200 years or so after the death, the resurrection of Christ. Again, We often think about Leonardo da Vinci's depiction of what they call the Last Supper. Well, this is what it originally looked like. And again, this is not something you want to put in your home. But as you can see, this is Jesus and the disciples. All people of color. All people of color. 4th century. Now, when I said the Last Supper, that the most famous one that everybody sees. You know when they did? You know when they did that? That was in the 1400s. You talking many hundreds of years later, because it was the Catholic Church who commissioned Michelangelo and commissioned Leonardo da Vinci to make these beautiful works of art that were inaccurate. So they had models that were from their family in different places. They were totally inaccurate. But that's how you enslave a people. Catholic churches, they masters at enslaving people spiritually. Okay? And this is how it looked originally. Even the Catholic Church has many of the so-called black Madonnas that depict, I'm not saying, again, you shouldn't have that. But the original Madonnas, the original images of Mary and the Son were jet black. And they still have many of them. And they know what, they're not stupid. We the ones can't believe that this Bible is talking about us, even with the knowledge and understanding that we have. Again, it should be used as a tool to free us. That's why when you read about Nehemiah, that's why he went to the scriptures and read and applied it to his situation and to his people's situation. I'm captive. I'm going to pray to you, Lord. I'm going to acknowledge our sin as a people. And we're going to press on to be free and to rebuild. That's what Daniel was trying to do. Daniel was doing what? Praying, making intercession for his people. You think he was praying 3 times a day just to be, what do you think he was praying about? He was praying about the liberation of his people. That's what he was concerned with. See, it's even bigger than us. Here we have, who is this? This is Abraham. This is 320 AD. This is Abraham. 320 AD in Rome, the catacomb in Rome, when he's about to slay his son. You see, they don't show you this coming up. I never saw this until I was an adult. Who is this? This is Samson. I mentioned Samson. Samson, and he's dealing with this lion. This is between 350, or circa means about 350 to 400 AD. See, he don't become a white man until much later. Till much later. Who is this? This is from 300 AD, also in Rome, and that's Jonah. That's Jonah. Okay, so again, all these depictions, the earliest depictions, so a people of color. Let's get back to the scriptures. Deuteronomy 28. Deuteronomy 28. Because as I said, once you go against God, you do it to your own detriment. And he warned us. The mouth of Moses warned us what would happen if we forsook him. He said, only you have I known for all the nations of the earth, therefore I will punish you for all your iniquity. This is Deuteronomy 28 and verse 15. I will read the blessings, but they didn't happen but for a moment. We steady in these curses. So let's go to verse 15, and when you be ready, go ahead.
But it should come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. All right, so he says, if you don't listen, if you are not obedient to the law, statutes, commandments of God, you will be cursed as a people. See, our condition is not because we are inferior. We are not inferior to anybody. When you look at
when you look at what we have been through as a people, we're the strongest people on the planet. Most people would not be able to survive what we went through. The strongest of us survived. They still trying to eliminate black folks. And we still survive. But it shall come to pass that thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Your situation is because you have been cursed by God. Not because of skin, but because of disobedience. Keep going, please.
Verse 16. Cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field.
Cursed shalt thou be in the city and in the field. You can apply that to our situation today. Many of us are here through our parents who were here by way of Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas. And yet, they left that hellish condition in the South because they didn't want to sharecrop or pick cotton and see opportunity, and came to these urban hells and suffered some more. Cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field. Go ahead.
Cursed shall be thy basket and thy store.
Cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. Economically, you're going to be cursed. I want to read something to you. You don't have this. This is from Glenn Ford, who does Black Agenda Report, and he was reporting, this is from a couple years ago, but nothing has changed. Actually, it's gotten worse. It says, the title is, Study Shows Blacks Will Never Gain Wealth Parity with Whites Under the Current System. He says, the gap between black and white household wealth quadrupled from 1984 to 2007, totally discrediting the conventional wisdom that the U.S. is slowly and fitfully moving towards racial equality or some rough economic parity between the races. Like most American myths, it's the direct opposite of the truth. When measured over decades, blacks are being propelled economically downward relative to whites at quickening speed, according to a new study by Brandeis University. The gap between black and white households ballooned during the 23-year study period. So they did a study for 23 years. As white families went from a median of about $22,000 in wealth, that's in 1984, to $100,000, a gain of $78,000 in that 23-year period. In the same period, black household wealth inched up from a base of $2,000 per family to only $5,000. The sweat and toil of an entire generation had netted black families only $3,000 additional dollars, while white families emerged from the period with a net worth of $100,000 that can be used to send a couple of kids to college, make investments, help out other family members, or contribute to the larger white community. The typical black family has no such options. And you know this man is telling the truth, because we can look at our pocketbooks, and many of us, including I'm speaking myself, broke. Broke. Why? Because wealth is passed down. It's not about you going to get a job. Viewed another way, the median white family has 11 times richer than the median, was 11 times richer than the median black family in 1984. By 2007, the white household had become 20 times richer than its black counterpart. Cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. Verse 18 reads, Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body and the fruit of thy land, the increase of thy kind and the flocks of thy sheep. So everything you have going to be cursed. Even what you put your hope in, your children will be cursed. And you look at our children graduating 50% graduation rate. You look at our males being thrown into these plantations they call jails. Then our young daughters have nobody to marry. Cursed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and cursed shalt thou be when thou goest out. The Lord shall send upon thee cursing, vexation, and rebuke, and all that thou settest thy hand unto for to do. Nothing you do as a people will be beneficial as a whole, not as individuals. That's not where power lies anyway. As a whole, you know, don't talk to me about Oprah. I don't want to hear about Michael Jordan. None of that, please. He says, until thou be perished, and until thou be destroyed, and until thou perish quickly, because of the wickedness of thy doings, whereby thou hast forsaken me. And it's real simple. All we have to do as a people is turn to Him. That's all we have to do as a people, to change our condition in all generations, even right now. Even right now. Verse 25, when you're there, you can go ahead.
The Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies. Thou shalt go out one way against them, and flee 7 ways before them. It shall be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth.
He said, at one time he was a strong high tower. He said, but I'm going to curse you, and you're going to be destroyed before your enemies, and you're going to be scattered into all the kingdoms of the earth. That's why everywhere you go, you can find us. Everywhere you go, you can find us. Skip down to verse 28. When you're there, go ahead.
The Lord shall smite thee with madness and blindness and astonishment of heart.
So you're going to be fearful and angry and crazed because of your condition, because you don't see a way out. Go ahead.
And thou shalt grope at noonday, as the blind gropeth in darkness, and thou shalt not prosper in thy way. And thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save thee.
No man's going to save you. And that's how we are to this day. Verse 30.
Thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build an house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and shalt not gather the grapes thereof.
So it said you're going to get a wife, you're going to marry her, and another man going to lie with her, man, take your wife, and there's nothing you can do about it. You're going to build a house, you're going to build plantations, you're going to build a White House, and you're not going to dwell in a house, you're going to live in a shack. Barely clothed, barely fed.